All right, welcome back, everybody. This is another episode for the Family Movie Time podcast. I'm Jeff M. Giordano, your host. And to give a little introduction, our recent episodes were heavily in the 90s. I didn't really plan that, but there's a multiple movies from the 90s. I was wanting to do a recently made film, so I came up with CODA, which was the came out in 2019. And I want to thank everybody for listening to the episodes. If you want to support, I got a PayPal link. I'll put that in the description. If you want to subscribe, go ahead. Um, I have a Patreon as well. I've been a filmmaker myself for about 20 years, making documentaries. I also worked in education for about 15 years in special education in public schools. And I'm also a film curator. If anybody listening to this lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, I am a film curator at the Clarion Performing Arts Center in Chinatown in San Francisco. And I also have a film screening from one of my own movies coming up in August 17th at the San Francisco Main Public Library for a feature documentary that I made some years ago called The God-Given Talent, The Creative Life of Charles Curtis Blackwell, who is a jazz poet, visual artist, playwright, educator, really great human being, and almost like a Renaissance artist in his own way. Without further ado, I want to introduce Ben, and I'll let you say some things about yourself. You got the mic,
Yeah.
Ben.
Hey everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm not as distinguished as our fearless host here. I am really just a big cinema lover. Fell in love with movies when I was in high school, and I've really just been watching them nonstop. I guess the closest thing to to any like industry stuff is I've been in a few short films that friends have made that have been in local Philadelphia. I'm from the Philadelphia greater area. That shouldn't dox myself. There are millions of us. And Yeah, so I've been in a few short films, and I currently am one of the. I joined a Philadelphia horror movie watching group, which I know is not exactly always a family film, but I run screenings there and I host live events. And we, so if you're in the Philly or even New York City area, we branch out. Feel free to join. You can always follow me on Letterboxd at Kangpin, KANGPIN 3939. That's my Letterboxd handle. So if you're curious what I'm watching, it's usually a weird 1950s to 70s horror movie. You can follow me there, read some of my reviews. But other than that, just a big film lover. So super excited to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to talk about these movies, this movie, and the other stuff we saw.
Cool. And I'll say my letterbox is Family Movie Time. So if you search that out, and I have an ongoing list. I think it's almost at 840 movies now that are like potentially family friendly or have elements of themes that perhaps families could watch together, or different generations could get together and enjoy. I'm trying to really focus on non-violent
Yeah,
movies and live action movies, and obviously stuff with not too much language, and the adult themes are kind of at the minimum, and it's more stuff that like younger people can enjoy and actually like understand, and stuff that's entertaining as well. So we'll talk about CODA. I have this DVD that somebody had given me, so
oh, nice.
this is the way that I was able to watch the movie. Uh,
Oh, cool.
it is a film that, if you haven't seen it, my from my research, the only way you can see it is through Apple Original Films, and or you rent it. It's not a movie that unfortunately is like easy to stream. Did you find that as well?
Yeah, I had to go through my Apple TV account. I didn't really see any physical releases. I didn't look extremely hard for any physical releases, but it hasn't been picked up by like Criterion or any like Blu-ray, company that. So Yeah, I had to go through Apple TV as well.
Wow. I'm sorry I missed the film in the theater. I imagine it would be like
Yeah,
really more of an
powerful.
emotional experience. Um, and had you seen the movie before?
No, this was my first time. Yeah, so I'd heard about it through probably someone on YouTube talking about it, but this was my first time watching it.
Wow. And we could talk about, I got a lot of notes, but I'll start with what did you find like most surprising about the story or maybe one of the characters?
Um, I felt most surprising. So I was like not expecting it to be so joyous almost. There's a lot of like I want to use the word mirth almost in this film. Like of course there's a lot of, downtrodden scenes as well, but I think that's what really shocked me the most is how like endearing and almost cheesy a lot of this film was. Which I ended up really enjoying towards the end. It totally won me over. But I was like, especially because this has a best picture win. Usually when you think of those movies, they're very, serious or very heavy. But this was very, light and breezy for the topic matter.
I found it to be what was surprising to me was it was like more funny than I thought it would be. Like
Yeah.
intentionally funny, or it's just like awkward conversations between the daughter and her parents, or the daughter and her friends, or the music teacher, Mr. V. Like I laughed at a lot, like most of the scenes with him and the way he teaches, and he's so like direct and honest, and he's really trying to like help them sing better and like all his techniques. Like I love those choir
Yeah.
class scenes.
Yeah, I highlighted the one scene that I thought was super funny and out of nowhere was when she brings the boy home that she has a crush on, and they kind of walk in on their parents getting intimate. And I thought I was so shocked that that was not that that was there, but it was just came out of left field and was so funny. Um, but that, yeah, that was my favorite like humorous scene, I suppose. I did also enjoy the choir teacher as well. Thought he was kind of like the emotional grounding of the film, really, kind of like the guidance or the her mentor, which I thought was a really fun dynamic.
Yeah, and I would say too, the there's a lot of modern stuff. Like her brother, he's in his early 20s. He's on his phone a lot, and you realize like early in the movie, like like second, third scene, he's like on Tinder. He's just trying to get a match, and then he's showing his
Yeah,
parents some of the
he's a
people.
ladies' man, despite despite all the adversity in his life, he is still a ladies' man.
And this kind of like the obvious idea of family, and like this young woman is the interpreter for her parents who are deaf. Her brother's deaf. Um, so there's this whole thing of like, why wasn't she born deaf? And it comes up later in the movie. There's a nice scene where her and her mother, Marley Matlin, have this really like heartfelt conversation, and um, that was, I would say, one of my favorite scenes too, where they're really like honestly, talking about each other and kind of what they think, or as each other as they're both getting older, you get this sense of like kind of her independence, but her family depends on her too to be an interpreter.
Yeah. There's an emotional vulnerability that really gets explored in the third act, I feel, that I think everyone can, anyone who's been a teenager and has had to had a weird, a tough conversation with your parents or guardians can appreciate. My favorite emotional, like, kind of scene, I think, is a little bit after her and her mom have the discussion where she talks with her brother, too, about kind of the juxtaposition of her being, of hearing and him having hearing difficulties and just how he doesn't want to like he wants her to spread her wings and go while her parents might necessarily not. It was really fun, interesting dynamics all throughout that kind of third act.
The music that she listens to the daughter on her record player, like I mean, I'd heard the Shags years ago, the band, the Shags.
I love the Shags.
And then I actually had just like looked them up again to see if some of them were still alive or if they even made any other music. So I appreciated that they chose like bands that are not like super mainstream
Commercial.
or
Yeah.
yeah, or commercial bands. You appreciated that too?
I'm a big Shags fan. Kurt Cobain famously said that the Shags were his favorite band of all time. Um, they're fascinating. I also think it was brilliant to include them because they were a family band, and that had like disastrous results, really unfortunate stuff, and unfair working conditions. And I thought that was super interesting because this movie is about a family business that is like struggling and that is adapting and not is anything like the Shags because that's a whole can of worms. But I thought it was a really clever needle drop, which is yeah.
And the one kid in the choir class had a King Crimson t-shirt.
I didn't catch that. That's awesome. Oh, I
I
love
want to
King.
say too, the movie, and I didn't even really catch this till the end credits. It is based on a French film from 2014 called, I think it's the Bellier family. Uh,
Yeah.
so in the French movie, when I did some research and I watched some of the French film to get an idea of the tone of it and like the characters, the setting, the family works for like it's like a small farm and they make cheese. And I think they're already part of a co-op with other, groups that are doing similar kind of work. And the father's look and like his style, his beard is similar to the father in CODA. Um, the music teacher was French. He was not from Mexico City. Um, and then her brother, the character of the brother was like, I think in middle school, he wasn't in his early 20s, like the brother in CODA. So those were like interesting differences, but some of the jokes were still there. And, the essential conflict, I think the conflict in the French one is like, they want to build a mall where the farm is.
Oh no.
And then the father actually runs for mayor in their town because he's trying to prevent the mall from being built. And he feels like if this one candidate becomes elected mayor, that has a better chance of the mall being built. So they like the daughter helps him enroll and like become a candidate for mayor. So that was like an interesting choice too.
Yeah. Bit different than what they ended up going with in Coda.
And the language, like the language was like more adult language, and I feel like I probably still prefer Coda than the French one. And I tried to actually watch the whole movie, honestly, the French version, but the way the ads would come on and then like it would just cut out of the movie sometimes, and I'd have to like go back in and like restart
Uh,
it. So I just gave up with these with the ad
yeah.
stuff. It's just like, oh, it's too much sometimes.
The hassle. No, for real. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised that there was more adult language in the French version. It's like a very European kind of film thing to do.
And I think Coda, the original script, I think it was going to be an R-rated movie initially, but they toned down some things, and
Yeah.
I think they wanted to keep it to PG-13. So
I think it's stronger as a PG-13 film. I think, I mean, first of all, more families can go see it, because it has that PG-13 rating anyway, so it's definitely more appealing. But I also like this didn't need any more swearing. It didn't like it didn't need violence at all, and it definitely didn't need any more like I don't know suggestive themes. I think it's like perfect at with the level of maturity that it reaches.
yeah, and for being a 2019 movie, it still feels like kind of a fresh contemporary film. Like a lot of the topics, the issues, obviously the economic concerns, the financial challenges the family's going through, and this kind of coming of age story with the daughter, and like, she's getting ready to finish high school. So there's this mystery if she's gonna like wind up moving out, going away to college, or she's gonna stay home and like help with the family business. I really like those story elements.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen a lot of films like that in the last 5 years. This is a great companion piece to something like Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig. There was another one too, Booksmart by I want to say Olivia Wilde as well. It's a little more raunchy than Lady Bird and this film, but kind of follows the same idea. High school young woman, high school, has to deal with some odds and grows through the film. So I think that's like been a trend recently. I was really pleased that Coda still felt fresh because I have seen that movie quite a bit at this point.
And you mentioned Sound of Metal, like you
Yeah.
saw some similarities. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Sound of Metal is an R-rated film, so I don't know if I'd consider it a family film. I was thinking about it. I feel like if you have a junior high schooler or a middle schooler, depending on where you're from, um, who's very mature, they'd appreciate it. A high schooler who's into movies would love this movie. I think it's perfect for them. But Sound of Metal is about a young man who is in recovery for a heroin addiction, and he plays in a they call it a metal band. I'd say it's more punk, but that's neither here nor there. He plays in a metal band with his very kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? His girlfriend, who's super, super wealthy, but chooses to live very, off the gridish because, stick it to her dad, kind of the bohemian lifestyle. Everybody, the 20s. Um, so he loses his hearing through playing through tinnitus, the condition you can get through listening to loud music and playing loud music, and it's really about his struggle kind of adapting into a world of like silence. So I think it's a fantastic companion piece to Coda. Came out around the same time, I think maybe 2 years earlier, and can't recommend it enough on HBO Max.
That's a good one, yeah, too. I remember seeing that one a couple years ago, and the guy who the lead star, he's gone on to do a lot of stuff since that
Yeah,
movie.
Riz Ahmad, I believe his name is. He is. I don't know what else he's been in. Oh, he was in Nimona. If you saw that on Netflix, the animated film Nimona, he was a big part of
Oh,
that. Yeah, but he's fantastic in Sound of Metal, and he learned sign language for the role. Like, yeah, completely. He learned it through conversation. Didn't use like any textbooks. He just immersed himself completely into that world. So,
kind of like Amelia Jones in Coda, the actress.
yeah,
She learned sign language. She learned, I think, how to sing too. Like, took all these classes and wanted to kind of, be compelling and convincing enough as the character, as the daughter of the family.
the I feel like the devotion is so important, especially when you're trying to represent a marginalized community. That really, I'd want to like make it clear, you shouldn't pity these people. They're people, but you really want to, treat the subject with the utmost care because this is a really important community and you want to do right by them, especially if you're looking to make a profit off the story about them. So I think both Coda and Sound of Metal, really all the films we've talked about so far today, have handled kind of this delicate subject matter like impeccably.
Have you seen The Miracle Worker or there's another movie I came across. Oh, Children of a Lesser God. That's a Marley Matlin movie from 1986. Have you seen any of those?
No, I haven't seen either of those. Are they similar kind of plots or concepts?
Yeah, The Miracle Worker is about Helen Keller, like her
Oh,
early
okay.
life as a kid, and she has a teacher that's like it becomes a breakthrough for her as far as communicating. I
Gotcha.
did a previous episode on The Miracle Worker.
Right.
It's kind of a tough movie to watch. Like people were like, "Is it really a family friendly movie?" Like because in the movie, the character of Helen Keller, the performer, like she's throwing things and like really like a hostile, person, and her teacher helps her to like, manage her emotions and just like how to communicate her needs and it becomes kind of this story about their bond and then also the family is trying to figure out too and adjust to like her kind of getting older and stuff. So I saw a little bit of, you know, overlap with that movie. I haven't seen Children of a Lesser God, which is probably the movie that made Marley Matlin famous. It's about a speech teacher at a school for the deaf who falls in love with the janitor, who's a deaf woman, speechless by choice. So and then a little more research. I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but there's a movie Sidney Lumet directed from 1988. It's a PG-13 movie called Running on Empty. It's about like the eldest son of a fugitive family, and he comes of age, wants to live his own life. It's got River Phoenix in it, Judd
Oh,
Hirsch.
nice.
So that movie came up because of it being about, you know, the child of in a family who's getting ready to kind of live on their own, or they should be living on their own.
Right.
Um, to mention the other performers in CODA before I forget, we have Amelia Jones plays the daughter, Marley
She was
Matlin
brilliant.
as the mother, the
Yeah.
wife. You have Troy Coaster is the father, and then you have Daniel Durant is plays her brother. And yeah, I hope these folks get more roles, and
Yeah.
I want to see them do more movies and get out there. I think they're all really talented performers.
Yeah, I know it can be tough to find, especially you would definitely know more than me since you work in the industry. I know that I imagine it's very difficult to find a lot of casting opportunities when you're hard of hearing, um, just because of how the industry is kind of working against you. But I'd love to see more of the father and the brother, especially. I thought they were really, really kind of standouts. Obviously, Amelia Jones knocks it out of the park. She's brilliant. But in terms of like supporting characters, the rest of the family were amazing. Uh, it all felt very real. Like the scenes at the dinner table felt there was like a very realness, and like they definitely got the emotional vulnerability and like the family dynamic across.
The director I want to give some props to, Cyan Hader, I think, or Header. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but um, Cyan learned American Sign Language while she was in the process of writing the screenplay.
That's
And
impressive.
there was a lot of, in terms of the funding, um, when it became clear to the financiers that the director intended to cast real deaf actors for all the deaf characters, the financiers threatened to withdraw their funding. So Marley Matlin said she would not be in the movie if if that was the case, and then the financiers
Not
reversed
bad.
their decision.
That's such a shame. That's unfortunate. But it won him an Oscar, so maybe they should have stuck with it from the start.
Some other research about the making of the movie I'll share. So Troy Coaster, the father, he's also the father to a hearing daughter in real life.
Hmm.
Um, and then what else did I find? The so I don't know. I didn't catch this till the end, but CODA means children of deaf adults. And you
I
also
no clue.
did you
Yeah,
catch
wow.
that?
No, I didn't know. You just blew my mind live right here.
I mean, it doesn't come up in the movie, but and then you
Yeah,
also have the coda in music,
right.
the concluding passage, in a music composition. Um, and it says that the coda symbol is visible on the page of the musical symbols that Mr. Uh, Villa-Lobos is teaching Ruby during a montage scene, but I didn't catch that.
It's definitely like you got to pause or you're gonna miss it.
Um, Want to get to the one of the things I appreciated, and maybe this is like a universal kind of theme, is this idea of like making friends and meeting new people, especially as like a human being ages and gets older.
Yeah.
What did you pick up on that, or you have some thoughts on that?
through like the concept of making friends or like found family almost.
Yeah, or just like as you get older, you move out, you're in
Yeah,
college, or even like if you can imagine, like somebody in their 50s, my take is it is kind of harder if somebody's in their 50s, 60s to like make new friends or because it feels like maybe in contemporary times, it's like you have your circle of friends. As you get older, that's kind of it. Like you kind of
yeah.
rarely make like new best friends, for example. Do you have, yeah, anything?
No, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I kind of just moved to a new town 6 months ago, so I've been in it. I've been living in it. The whole needing to make new friends thing. It is tough. I think the film tackles it super well because really they go from being they're not outcasts in the fishing community, but they're definitely not the most popular individuals within this, micro culture and in Boston. I think they're out of. Um, but I think it's amazing just through like the way they can build community and the way they build this foundation and eventually this business throughout the film. It's very powerful, and it is a nice reminder that like no matter where you are in your life, just being kind to people and like working with people usually benefits pretty heavily for you socially. It's a good way to make friends.
Yeah. Um, the fishing community, the fishing industry, I felt like that was interesting. I was glad that they didn't follow the original French movie and have them just be farmers or they,
Yeah,
they cheese processors. And seeing like that world was really kind of fascinating because it is kind of an old school or old world
yeah,
industry, which has, you know, the underpinnings of like it's been taken over by commercial kind of huge fishing ships.
yeah. It serves really well to like define the two worlds she lives in as well. Because in the French film, I mean, there's still a definition there, but both are on land. Here, we're literally like leaving one, world, and we're going out into the unknown sea. There's a way more like defined, clear cut boundary between like her life as a high schooler who wants to have fun and date cute boys and meet friends and go to college and sing, and her life is like a businesswoman, which is and she's a ruthless businesswoman, which I loved. The scenes of her haggling, incredible. She knocks it out of the park. But there is like this really fun, clear cut boundary that this film establishes that I think is brilliant.
And you have that opening scene is like the water,
Yeah,
and then you get to the boat, and it's like a really beautiful way to start
the
the
movie, yeah,
story.
it sets the stage really well. They are in a beater of a boat, though. That thing is old. Yeah, as an East Coaster myself, I've seen plenty of boats on my travels. That thing is worse for wear.
I was glad like the way they handled the scene where the parents are watching her performance with the choir, the kind of like big performance day and all the parents are there, the school's there in this auditorium, and then you have the moment where the sound just drops out, and then especially the dad is like looking around at everybody's reaction and trying to kind of
Yep.
read from their facial reactions what like how they're taking it in. Are they liking it? Do they think she's a good singer? I really was like a very well done, like cinematic, you know.
Yeah. It forces us into their world too. Like we're denied the audio or like the sound that they would are not able to process. So it is a really powerful scene, and it's really like eye opening. It's definitely well shot, well directed, all around really good stuff.
I think because moments like that too, where the sound drops out, they could have used that a lot, like through the movie, and it could have
Yeah,
been used to the point where it was like, too much, or it just like they kind of leaned on it, you know, too often. But it was nice how like that in that moment is when it happens, to really like help you understand their perspective, their experience.
yeah, they saved it for the perfect time because anywhere else in the film, I think probably would have been overkill or weird. But I think that is like the perfect scene to have that effect come in.
in terms of your own viewings as a younger person, as a kid or a teenager, what are like the live action family friendly movies that are part of your like
Oh, my
childhood?
upbringing, live action family friendly movies. Okay, honestly, I watched a lot of Wes Anderson growing up, which is not always family friendly, but Moonrise Kingdom, in my opinion, is a very family friendly film. Um, really, that movie really kind of changed how I look at film in general. I'm trying to think what else I watched a ton of growing up. Um, Zoolander. It's not really a family movie, but my mom loved it, so watched a lot of Zoolander. And then I was raised on a lot of animated films, right? I was lucky enough I was born in '98, so I kind of came around right towards the tail end of the Disney Renaissance. So Mulan, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, like Pocahontas. These movies are not, they haven't aged particularly well in some cases, but and of course the Pixar movies, Toy Story, Wall-E. Let's see what else. There's Up, where I cry every single time. So really, I grew up with mostly animated family films, but a couple live action ones. Nothing ever like Coda, which is probably, I mean, I just don't think they were making movies like that in the mid to late 2000s when I was kind of becoming a teenager or like young teenager. Really, that's something I think we're seeing a lot more diverse storytelling in like the last really five to 10 years. So happy it's made. I'm super happy that people younger than me can experience this film as they're growing up and just have this be like a baseline kind of like experience and change the way they maybe think about the world.
There's a Disney movie, Amy, from 1982 that I had seen a couple months ago while doing research for the podcast, and then you were able to see it.
Yeah, I
What
caught it
was your,
yesterday actually.
yeah, what was your impression of Amy, that movie?
It started out with me being like, okay, another 80s Disney made for TV movie. This is going to be really fun, but probably cheesy. And then it just got like, I got so engrossed. There's, it's dark. It is a family movie, but it's not afraid to like, it's 1918 and people pass away. There are tragic events that happen. Um, but I loved it. Great feminist film. I think it's a really great story about a woman kind of gathering the courage to really be herself. I loved the Irish Doctor. I loved the football scene. There's a scene where they play the school for the hard of hearing and hard of seeing play the the I don't like whatever the local public school is, and they wallop them. Yeah, I really recommend if you have a Disney Plus account, you should absolutely search this movie out. It is I was reading about it. I think the Disney execs were like shocked too because they originally it was for TV. They sent it to theaters, which may or may not have had anything to do with the fact that the lead actress was also in American Werewolf in London, which was very big at the time. Um, but really brilliant stuff. What did you think about it?
I like the fact that it balances the main characters like trying to escape her marriage from this guy, and she's kind of in hiding, but she doesn't explain any of those details to the school that she wants to work at, and she winds up being hired at. And my favorite scene, one of the favorite moments, one of the other teachers at the school, she's like says to her, "Hey, you're really attractive, you're pretty, like why don't you just find a guy that's
Yeah,
rich and get married?" And then she turns and says, "Well, that's what I had already done."
yeah, it's like
You know,
been there, done that.
it didn't work out.
Yeah, no, it like worked out exceptionally poorly. Find a nice Irish doctor instead.
And then just her passion for teaching and like being part of their community. It's like in this kind of rural setting. And as
Yeah.
you said, it takes place, the setting is like 1918. So it has this cool, like period piece, feel to it. It doesn't shy away from things like death. And even there's like fights among some of the kids in the
Oh
school.
yeah. There's
And
bullying. There's a lot of bullying that
yeah,
gets
there's like,
discussed.
it has an edge to it that I appreciated and that grounds it in like reality and keeps it like honest.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I like that. I've been trying to watch a lot of the made for TV ones,
They're good. They're like surprisingly really good most of the time.
and even some of the like more obscure, I mean overall more obscure live action ones like the Secret of Natty Gann. It's got John
Ooh.
Cusack.
Oh, I need to add that to my watch list. I
That
like
one is
John.
like on the fence a family friendly movie because there's like a there's maybe you could define it as like a not totally appropriate
Yeah,
age wise relationship that develops later in the movie.
gotcha,
But like
gotcha.
a lot of the stuff before that, there's I mean it takes place during the Great Depression. There's like people trying to just like, survive and they're on the road, they're traveling, there's all this stuff like in nature and like um so I appreciated that stuff, but I'm not wasn't really sure about
Yeah,
the way this one like love story kind of thing develops
yeah,
later.
it kind of ended up.
But you should, I think you would probably appreciate it because it's a little
Yeah, I'll
bit,
definitely check it out.
it's got an edge to it. It's early John Cusack. He's got like a
Yeah.
baby face.
Oh, yeah. Better Off Dead era John Cusack is the best John Cusack. Easy, hands down, hands down.
What is your take, like the contemporary landscape of family friendly movies or children's like movies for kids? What is your take on that?
It's rough out here right now, I think. I love Marvel. I'm gonna, my letterboxd username is two Marvel characters put together, right? Like I'm clearly a huge Marvel fan. I'm sick of the movies at this point. I'm sick of huge budget, very, very heavy CGI, kind of like popcorn filler films. There's nothing wrong with loving these movies. I love these movies too, but there's also not really anything to chew on in a lot of what I think are made for families today. Animated films too. Like I have feelings about Illumination Studios. It's like a discussion for a whole other time, but I think it's really hard to come by like a well-made, small-budget family movie nowadays. And I think it's showing. I really don't know how many people are going to take their families to the movie theaters anymore. Partly because it's so expensive, and the economy right now is not fantastic. Also, partially just because like I don't know, it just all feels very mundane what's coming out. Like I couldn't even tell you what came out in the past few Fridays. I think the last big movie I went to go see was Dune 2. And that's not a family movie. That was barely a me movie.
Yeah, it seems maybe it's also like in terms of the economics, it's easier to make animated movies rather than live action movies. And it's safer to do remakes, it's safer to do sequels or prequels or combine, different characters for their own movie together. Um, but yeah, it does kind of make me think like I think that is kind of a beautiful experience, like if you can watch a movie with your parents.
Oh, yeah.
And not
Yeah.
not just around the holidays, but like, the rest of the year too.
Yeah, like on a given Thursday night. Like just, have that experience.
So,
Yeah.
was there any films you mentioned seeing some movies with your mother? Was there anything else you had seen with your mom or parents or family?
Let's see. My dad and I have recently, I go over to hang out with my parents once a week because, I'm a good son, go over there, do some chores for them. They feed me. It's a great deal. It's a great deal. But we've been just watching like a ton of like old 40s movies, some of which are not family friendly, not unfamily friendly because it's the 1940s. Like, what are you going to put on the screen that's allowed that's going to be that dramatic? But there's been some like I watched what was it? Meet Me in St. Louis, a classic, amazing movie. It happened one night. I watched that recently with my parents, and that was like magical. I think overall best movie I've seen this year is probably Charlie Chaplin's the one where he's like in the machine, modern.
Modern Times.
Yes, Modern Times, brilliant, amazing family film. But honestly, like just the smile I had on my face the whole time was unreal. It is a beautiful film, and I don't know, maybe it's like the secret 80-year-old man in me, but I haven't had an experience like that with new movies before. Maybe the last one was like La La Land back in like 2016, where I felt like very engrossed and like fully just there.
Wow. Have you seen a lot of Chaplin stuff?
I've seen a bit. I've seen The Great Dictator, of course. Everyone needs to see that. Modern Times, and I watched The Kid. So that's it. I really need to watch more. I have The Circus lined up for pretty soon on my little Criterion challenge I do every year. Um, Brilliant. Him and Buster Keaton are like two of my heroes in terms of both filmmaking and just comedy. The way they do physical comedy is unmatched, even 100 years later. Nobody's doing it like they did. So yeah, if you if you have kids who want to laugh, if you watch this show and you're like, I kind of want to watch an old school movie with my family that would definitely go over well, go for Chaplin. So endearing. So, make the kids put their phones away. It's hard. Okay. I have struggled with it too. Everybody put their phones away. Enjoy a Chaplin movie for like an hour.
With you mentioning phones, because that is part of CODA too. Like the brother's on his phone, he's on Tinder, he's trying to get dates, and then you can tell like because the main character is a high school student, teenager, that's part of her environment. Do you think as far as like are we beyond the point? Like, do we just accept that everybody's addicted to their phone, basically? Like, is there any hope, or how do you, when you see people younger than you now, what do you wish you could tell them to like help them about like not being so addicted?
I go to shows probably once a week. I live in Philadelphia, big metropolitan area, tons of clubs to go to shows at, and it just drives me up a wall when people are just filming the set with their phone. Like, come on, be in the moment, be present. I actually think it's interesting because in Coda, when they're doing the Tinder at the dinner table, the daughter complains, and then the mom's like, "Why? That we do this together? Like, this is something we all do together."
As a family.
Yeah, as a family. Um, no, I mean, this also goes into why the family movie industry is not doing so well. Like, what you're competing against YouTube. Like, there's no way you're going to beat YouTube. An hour and a half movie, our kids' attention spans are getting significantly shorter. There are papers coming out about this, and you're gonna talk your kid into watching like a hour and a half long movie or a 20-minute Mr. Beast video. That's a hard choice for a 6-year old. That's a tough one. So I don't know. I think it's an unnecessary. I think it's an unfortunate future. I'm planning, if I, whenever I do have a family myself, I'm planning on limiting phone access. I'm hoping that a lot of people in my generation, the group that's in their mid to late 20s right now, have seen the younger generation become glued to it and probably, hopefully, also want the same. But it's tough. It's tough. A lot of iPad kids, as they say.
I think it was in France recently, there was talk about like kids shouldn't have smartphones until age 13.
It's like a safety thing too. I know everyone's so sick of people being like the internet's a dangerous place, don't talk to strangers. You hear it all the time, especially if you're younger. But there's a reason, right? Like the internet is a dangerous place. Um, you can't protect your kid forever, but like you should give them a running start and let them, develop the noggin a little bit and learn a little before you thrust them onto the wild west of the online world.
What about schools? Like, do you think schools should say, all right, you can't have your phone the whole day, or should it be like a teacher led thing?
I don't know. I worked as a naturalist, with taking kids on hikes, going camping, and we always had a very firm no phone policy because we were also in nature. Like, please don't play on your phone while we're on a hike. Enjoy the birds and the air and the trees. Um, it's tough. It's tough. When I was in high school back in the 2010s, I couldn't have my phone out, but in between classes I could. So there is a delicate balance, um, that I am very thankful I don't have to come up with. I am over the moon that I'm not handling this one.
I think a lot of it too is like maybe maybe kids need like a digital literacy class in like kindergarten or first grade, so they
Yeah,
really understand like what is this tool, what is this smartphone, what does this tablet really do, or what are the like you know extremes of it or the dangers of it, all these kind of all this like insight that they don't really get until they're already like addicted to it and it's too late
I know.
almost.
It's very scary. People will just read something online and then believe it as fact without really, and it's not their fault. I think they just honestly don't have the tool set to be able to like dissect something like that and be able to sniff out if it's baloney or not, which is terrifying for me, especially as someone who works in like the biomed field. Very, very scary. So hopefully, yeah. I mean, if we are gonna still be glued to our phones for the next, however long humanity makes it for, I would like everyone to get a little bit better at the media literacy and like knowing how to sniff out suspect stuff when they can.
And you mentioned live shows, like going to see live music. Have you played music yourself over the years in bands or?
No, both my parents are so talented, and I think it's a like a negative and a negative make a positive. I think I lost all of that somewhere on the road. I was in a choir for a while in school, so I've done gigs like that, which aren't nearly as fun as playing rock or like jazz or something. But so I have performed in those settings though. Phones are okay because it's mostly like parents filming us, so I understand for why you'd have phones then. Do you play at all? Are you how do you feel about it if you play?
I mean, over the years from my high school days, I would play music with a couple friends, and like one of them was more into like industrial music and like harder
Nice.
kind of stuff. The
Yeah,
other guy, the other guy was into like classical guitar and then like folk music and the blues. I feel like the sweet spot was like the blues, country music, folk
yeah.
music. But like as far as ability, I've only been able to really like make as far as instruments sound good, like the harmonica. And I could come up with lyrics. Like I've been into poetry since like a young, like
Oh,
probably since
nice.
sophomore year in high school. Love poetry, writing it. So like writing lyrics would come pretty easy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody needs a lyricist. If I was ever in a band, I'd be like the Mighty Mighty Boss Stones. I would just dance on stage. I'd be like that guy. I don't need to do anything else. If
Um,
only.
we got a little bit of time left. Is there anything
Ooh, I actually
else
did
you
have
want to say about the movie or yeah, is there you could check your notes. I'll look at mine.
yeah. We talked about the needle drops already in the music, so that took care of that. Um, okay, yeah. So this won Best Picture and was Apple like financed and produced through Apple Films. So what do you feel like the future of streaming platforms are in accordance with like big time, award winning films? And furthermore, are you afraid that because we're moving so digital, we'll have like a new influx of lost media of these maybe important movies like CODA?
I think that it would be great if somebody could develop like a new kind of theater chain where that would help keep alive like older movies, or you mentioned movies from the 40s earlier, like stuff that, places you can go to see those kind of movies. If I had the money, I would start maybe like a family movie theater franchise, and try to
Yeah,
open up these things and show like things like Coda or like The Circus by Charlie Chaplin, like
yeah.
these kind of movies through cinema history. Um, I would hope that like DVDs and Blu-rays continue to be made. I guess they'll go the route that vinyl has gone, where it's like new artists still put out a vinyl version, even though, most people might not have it.
Stream,
But
yeah,
I think the irony is like most people might have a record player now more than like an actual CD player or
yeah.
prefer like the vinyl to a CD.
They're not
Uh,
even in cars anymore. Like new cars are just getting rid of the CD player, which is
right.
a sad. It's like the end of an era for me. I
And
feel like
then
when Blockbuster went out of business all over again, like
the
stressing out.
Yeah, like the streaming has its qualities, has its positive aspects. Definitely been able to see like a lot of great stuff on the Criterion channel that I would never have been able to find. Um, I think the flip side of it or the other side of it is like, well, how are like independent filmmakers going to get paid for
Yeah,
their work? Because I think there's maybe a tendency where people are just like, well, I'll just watch it whenever it is streaming, and I'm not going to really worry about going to this small theater that might be 20 minutes from me, or maybe it's an hour or 2 hours from me. I'm not going to go all the way traveling just to
yeah,
see this movie. So I don't. I hope that like the experience of seeing it in a theater or seeing it in some kind of venue with strangers or with your family, with your friends, continues to be like a human activity. Um, I found it interesting filmmakers like the Thai filmmaker who did Memoria with
yeah.
Tilda
I feel like
Swinton. It
yeah,
picks up
I can't remember his name
yeah.
partly because I don't think I could pronounce it even if I wanted to,
He
but
did
I've heard really
tropical
great things.
he did tropical malady syndromes in a century. My favorite of his is Uncle Boone Me, who can recall his past
Yes,
lives.
I haven't
So
seen it yet. Is it good?
Uncle
I've
Boone
heard
Me
of
maybe is my favorite by him.
okay, sweet. I'll definitely have
It's a good ghost story, like Thai history kind of stuff. Anyway, I bring him up. The movie he made with Tilda Swinton, Memoria, which was only a couple years ago, um, his plan was only to have it available in theaters for like an extended time, and then it wouldn't be streaming
yeah,
for a while. So I'm wondering if that approach might be,
entice people. Yeah,
yeah, or maybe that approach will evolve where people will kind of utilize that, and that gives people a reason to go seek it out. Otherwise, I don't know, it's tough. And I understand, like, yeah, it's not cheap to go see a movie. If you have a family, you got to pay for all these tickets and all the
yeah,
food and stuff when you're at the theater. But it is like, I think it is still a kind of magical experience to like watch a movie in a theater with people you care about. Or if you just go by yourself and you're there with a bunch of strangers, like it's a really cool thing to do. It's like seeing live music,
yeah.
and you get to like laugh with other people. You get to maybe
Yeah.
cry with other people.
It's a
All those
wonderful sense of community.
reactions you get to hear. So I do know like there's a lot of some cities are trying to experiment with like micro cinemas.
Oh, nice.
And I know like New York City, there's a bunch. I know some video stores that are hanging on. They're trying to like experiment with film screenings. So hopefully maybe that could be more of a thing in the future.
Yeah.
Like somebody could have like a little boutique DVD Blu-ray rental store and it has a theater. Um, but it does look challenging as far as like how like certain kinds of movies will survive or convincing people to go to the theater. I think that's going to be kind of an ongoing thing that people will just have to keep experimenting with
Yeah.
ways of with that. Um, so I mean, I try to go see stuff, but then I also do stream stuff. So I'm not like maybe
Yeah, I'm part of the problem too. I rent plenty of movies on YouTube.
I
And
used to have I used to have more DVDs, but I needed the money, so I sold the ones that were like worth
yeah,
money.
I know. I one of the women in my book club just brought in a ton of DVDs for me today. She's like, "I'm cleaning my house out. Please take these." I was like, "Yoink." Say
And
no
then the
more.
ads, like,
Oh,
with
the
DVD or
ads.
Blu-ray, you don't get ads, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. The ads are brutal,
or
brutal,
just
brutal.
like with vinyl, you can listen to the full record, you're not going to get an ad break, you're not going to get it's not going to be interrupted.
Yeah,
Um
and I do like the feeling of having physical media too. There's
yeah.
something like nice about the tangibleness of it being in your hand. That's why I collect Criterion, much to the dismay of my bank account, which cries every time I buy one.
Yeah, I think, that's an example of a company. I think they're going to help keep alive
Yeah.
Blu-rays, DVDs, physical releases. And they do have their streaming channel, which is great. Um, and I do understand how not like everything can have a DVD release or a Blu-ray release. So there is kind of like a middle ground that hopefully we can figure out. Um, and I do hope, yeah, like as far as family-friendly movies, I hope it becomes like trendy to make them, eventually. Like
Yeah,
one of my maybe like goals with doing the podcast, like people can find like experimental or fun ways to like do that again. There seems to be maybe the 90s was almost like peak family friendly cinema.
definitely. Definitely.
I feel
80s and
like that's one
90s.
of those decades, yeah. Um, but I don't know, I try to keep an open mind and like support local theaters. I think that's something people can do. If you have an art theater near you, try to go see stuff, or at least, tell your art film friends about it.
Yeah. Art museums also tend to do screenings that are really, really fun and definitely out there most of the time. Um, yeah, and if you're looking for a family movie that came out recently, If by John Krasinski, I didn't love, but it's a totally original concept and it's a family film. I was happy to go support it.
Oh,
I think it made its budget back finally, which I'm glad about. It's not like this was a tiny studio or anything, but it's still nice to see something completely original come
yeah.
out and do okay.
I think the other aspect is like reading books. Like it's
Yes.
interesting if people still read books today or if kids still read books. Um, so that's another thing that I think has some parallels to like art film watching, if
Yeah.
you're a real like literary person. Do you have
Start now.
any
It'll help you so much in the future. Kids, if you're watching, crack open those books. You'll being well read is such a benefit for everything.
do you ever have ideas for movies of your own? Do you have some things or you try to work on?
I have like a it's not really so I used to sell short stories in college. Nothing crazy, like podcasts. I'm not a Stephen King or anything. I'm not selling to magazines. Um, so I've been playing around with some screenplays. They're not family friendly. Although I really want to challenge myself and write something family friendly. I usually write horror and I've done successfully with that, which I love, but I can only write that so many times before I start running out of things I'm afraid of myself. Um, so I am working on that, but I've never had a chance to really work in the film industry. Just wasn't ever really the path for me. I've I've utmost respect. I'm kind of a culture vulture when it comes to that. I go to film festivals. I love talking shop with people in the industry, but I've never had to struggle like people in the industry have had with filmmaking. It's very tough.
I have before we go, I just watched an Orson Welles movie, The Stranger, with Edward G. Robinson, Loretta Young. Have you seen that one?
No, I actually haven't seen a single Wells film ever.
That's one that I hadn't seen. I've seen most of his other directed movies, and he also co-stars in The
Oh,
Stranger.
does he?
So that might be one when you do your 40s movies,
To give it
uh,
a shot.
yeah, viewings. But yeah, Wells is I think maybe F for Fake. It's
Yeah,
like
I've heard about
this
that.
documentary essay. That one might be my favorite, maybe overall. But I
He's
appreciate
brilliant.
his
Yeah.
oh, his way of the way he made films is, that could be another episode or another podcast
I
by
mean,
itself.
I've seen clips of Citizen Kane, obviously, as a film buff. I've at least seen clips. And just the way it's shot and directed, it's like unique almost 100 years later. It still feels like the pinnacle of filmmaking, which, doesn't, there's plenty of movies that were huge when they came out and have depreciated wildly over time. Um, so yeah, definitely will keep that in mind. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, his stuff, maybe even with some of your family, like you're with your parents, you might
Oh
enjoy
yeah, for sure.
watching some of his stuff. Touch of Evil's another one.
Nice. I'll keep all these in mind. Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
my dad would go crazy to watch these movies with me, so I'll pitch them to him when I see him next.
I want to thank you for your time and
Thank you so much for
appreciate it.
having me. This was amazing. This was so much fun. I love talking about movies. Thank you so much for taking a chance on a random stranger who emailed you. Hey, can I be on the podcast?
You seemed, like a real person, not a
Yeah,
bot. Or
I think this worked out so well. Pleasant, pleasant surprises all around.
um, well, I'll pause the video there, and then we can say goodbye off the record.
Yeah,
And
sounds great.
I'll give you some movie recommendations too.
Yeah, let me pull up my
Um,
letterbox.
do you want to say your letterbox one more time for
Oh
people?
yeah. So if anybody wants to follow me on Letterboxd, it's Kangpin KANGPIN 3939. I mostly watch a lot of scary movies, and my reviews are not always family friendly. So be warned. I was on my best behavior on this podcast, but my friends can attest my vocabulary is not always verbose outside of professional settings. Um, so you can follow me on there. And that's pretty much it, really. Yeah, I got some projects coming out in a few months, but not worth plugging right now.
Well, thanks, Ben, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time on the Family Movie Time podcast.